The story begins with a young woman named Iori sits collapsed upon the floor, her posture radiating defeat as she gazes downward, her body dwarfed by the towering legs of a man standing beside her in a sharp suit. The silence of the moment contrasts sharply with the vibrant energy of her digital life, where a cooking class group chat buzzes with enthusiasm. Photographs of a pristine dish circulate among the members, eliciting praise for its delicious appearance. One member inquires whether she utilized silken or firm tofu for the recipe, while another notes their own attempt at preparing Japanese cuisine that day. The messages flit across the screen, one friend predicting that Iori's husband will surely love the meal she has prepared. Iori stares at the screen, regret washing over her for having announced her marriage to the group in the first place. The reality of her union bears no resemblance to the romanticized ideals her friends imagine. She reflects that she did not marry a boyfriend she had been dating. Instead, she has barely exchanged any words with her spouse. Her husband is Hayaki Saiga. Although a month has passed since their wedding, he refuses to eat the food she prepares. Despite the cold distance between them, a small, fragile hope persists within her that he might find some happiness in her efforts. The man she married is a figure of immense corporate stature. A dossier of his life reveals a trajectory of elite perfection. Hayaki Saiga, 32 years old, currently serves as the CEO of Saiga Homes. He is the eldest son of the president of Saiga Real Estate Holdings. His academic and professional history is flawless. After graduating with excellent grades from a prestigious private high school, he advanced to a national university. Upon joining Saiga Real Estate Holdings, he did not rest on his laurels but earned an MBA from a prestigious university's business school while simultaneously studying abroad in the United States and remaining employed by the company. By the age of 28, he had already secured a position as a board member of an affiliated company, and by 30, he was appointed CEO of Saiga Homes. Iori resigns herself to the nature of this union, accepting that this surreal existence is her lot in life. They do not even look at each other's faces. When they share a space, he offers a perfunctory phrase of gratitude for the meal, but he is perpetually busy and returns home late. They retreat to separate bedrooms to sleep. This arrangement, she acknowledges, is a political marriage in its purest form. A voice from her memory echoes in her mind, reminding her that if she truly finds the situation unbearable, she can separate later. It was promised to her that this arrangement would only last for 6 months. Her mind drifts back to the origins of this union, grappling with the sheer impossibility of the match. She questions why she would ever align herself with someone from the Saiga family. She recalls dealing with her father, a man she views as a walking embodiment of elite entitlement, and finding the idea of being with Saiga equally repulsive. She remembers the warnings instilled in her, "Don't trust them," and "Stay away." These admonitions were a constant presence in her mind. She confronts the memory of her father, demanding to know if he has forgotten the bad blood that exists between their family and the Saigas. She reminds him that he once described Saiga as the kind of man who clawed his way to the top using underhanded methods, a sentiment that used to be his personal motto. Despite the overwhelming sense of dread she feels about the Saiga family, she maintains her refusal. She vows that she will absolutely refuse to be with any man from that lineage. She decides to act as selfishly as possible to resist this fate. Yet, she senses a shift in her father, noting that his current demeanor is unlike his usual reactions. She questions if he has completely lost his mind to suggest marrying the eldest son of someone like Saiga. She suspects he is trying to manipulate her, thinking she will be easy to control. Deep down, Iori harbors a profound hatred for the very concept of marriage. It is not that she holds specific malice towards Saiga personally, nor does she believe there is something inherently wrong with him as a person. Her aversion stems from the example set by her parents. She watched them secretly resent each other in their hearts, showing no affection to their child. They married someone they did not love in a political arrangement, engaging in intimacy solely out of obligation, and raising their daughter as if she were merely a pawn. Witnessing this hollowness, she absolutely hates the institution. The context of this union involves two massive corporate entities. Shinomiya Real Estate boasts a wide reach and large operations, with many affiliated companies and related businesses. Iori acknowledges her status as a classic rich girl, the daughter of the Shinomiya Real Estate CEO and granddaughter of its chairman. Saiga Real Estate Holdings mirrors her family's company, possessing real estate as its core business. Both families have run their respective empires for generations, engaging in a long-standing rivalry where they constantly fight for market share. Their operations are remarkably similar. Because her father views her only as a pawn for political alliances, Iori anticipated that marriage talks would eventually arise now that she has turned 25. However, she sees a stroke of luck in the identity of her suitor. Because the match is with a Saiga, she possesses far more leverage to turn it down than if it were merely a politician's son. Her father, however, reveals the grim reality driving the proposal. The hotel business faces serious trouble due to a surge of foreign hotel chains entering the market. Occupancy rates have dropped significantly across the board. Saiga's hotels face a similar crisis. Consequently, there are discussions to merge Shinomiya Hotels with Saiga Hotels and Resorts. The urgency is palpable. If the situation continues, their other businesses will be dragged down by the costs of sustaining the failing hotels. It costs a fortune to keep them afloat. Iori learns that Saiga is leading these merger discussions. This revelation shocks her. Her father explains that the chairman opposes merging with Saiga because he fears Saiga will seize all the profits. The chairman believes that regardless of who takes the lead or holds the CEO title, Saiga will exploit the situation if he contributes more money. There is even fear he might abandon everything else afterward. To prevent Saiga from pulling anything shady, the strategy is to tie the families together by marriage. The plan dictates that Iori will marry Saiga's eldest son. Her father insists that even Saiga would not agree to something detrimental if they are bound by family ties. The chairman refuses to approve the merger unless Iori and Takamasa Saiga, referring to the eldest son, get married. Takamasa will take charge of the hotel division immediately and is set to become the CEO after the merger. Her father frames this as a decided matter, claiming they already have the other side's consent and that she has no choice but to comply. Iori realizes she does not even have the right to refuse. Memories of her isolation resurface. Her older brother, the heir who is 6 years her senior, never had time for her. Neither her mother nor her father were ever home much. As a child, she was always alone, starving for love. She desperately wanted someone to speak to her kindly, to hug her, or even to scold her. She recalls that she was never praised. The concept of a warm, ordinary home felt like something precious she had no place for. Sitting before her father in his study, Iori asserts that she understands the situation, but her internal resistance remains fierce. She declares that she would rather stay single her whole life than enter such a hollow marriage. She yearns for ordinary moments, like eating together and being greeted with a welcome home. She vows never to become a couple or a parent like her father and mother. Iori launches an emotional protest, crying and calling the situation cruel and unbelievable. She screams that she absolutely hates it. Despite understanding the business logic, she cannot stand Saiga and recoils at the sudden command to marry him. Sensing her desperation, her father offers a compromise. If she hates it that much, they can make it a time-limited arrangement. He instructs her to endure it for at least 6 months. If she still cannot stand it after that period, she is permitted to divorce. However, the marriage itself is non-negotiable. Merger preparations are already underway, and the wedding date has been decided without asking her. The wedding is set for 3 months from now. Her father explains the significance of the 6-month timeline. Saiga's largest hotel will have its grand reopening in 6 months. The plan is to use the wedding as a huge selling point during that opening to finalize the merger. Once that point is reached, splitting the companies again will be impossible, but she and Saiga can divorce afterwards. Iori realizes the other side has already agreed to this time limit option, likely anticipating her resistance. She understands that no matter what, they intend to force her into this marriage. They have pushed the issue this far despite knowing how much she hates it. Her father reminds her that many people could be left jobless and desperate if the merger falls through, effectively cutting off any thought of her running away. She resigns herself to the fact that neither family really wanted a marriage for the sake of union in the first place, so they would not object to a divorce later. She examines the profile of her future husband, reading the name Saiga Takamasa. She acknowledges that he is a total elite and objectively good-looking. The disparity between them weighs on her. She questions how a guy like this could be her husband while she feels inferior in contrast. She concludes they are just way too different in status. Later, standing before a rack of clothes, Iori selects a dress with a heavy heart. She dreads the formal meeting scheduled for next week. She rationalizes that since she is a Shinomiya and he is a Saiga, it is only natural that there is animosity. She recalls seeing him at a party and receiving a cold stare in return. This left her with a poor impression of him. She is convinced he absolutely hates her. Her thoughts spiral further as she considers his fidelity. She believes that because he hates her, she cannot expect him to be faithful. Although he is not particularly feminine-looking, his high specifications make him popular. She remembers that the woman by his side looked different each time she saw him. Resigned, she picks a simple outfit, deciding that something safe will suffice, accepting that the marriage is already decided regardless of her feelings. A few days have passed since Iori was first informed of the marriage arrangement, and the timeline shifts back to the day of the formal family introduction. Her smartphone screen illuminates with a notification for 1800 hours, alerting her that today is the formal family meeting at a venue designated as Saiga. Panic seizes her as she realizes the time. She tells herself she must hurry, fully aware that if she arrives later than her father, he will complain incessantly. In her haste, a mishap occurs in the hallway. Iori drops her bag, and its contents, a wallet, a smartphone, and various cosmetics, scatter across the tiled floor. As she scrambles to retrieve her belongings, she realizes with horror that her bag had been left open. A man stands before her, witnessing the chaotic display. Iori bows her head, apologizing profusely, repeating that she wasn't paying attention and is deeply sorry. The man, his face obscured from her low vantage point, assures her that it is really not a big deal. The man crouches down to assist her, his hand reaching for a checkered pouch. He suggests that the situation is a bit of a mess and attempts to take the blame, stating that he is the one who should apologize. Iori vehemently denies this, insisting the fault lies entirely with her. As she gathers the last of her items, the reality of the clock strikes her again. She exclaims that she is running late and mutters a curse under her breath before rushing away, leaving the encounter unresolved. Iori arrives at the meeting room, breathless. A staff member greets her, announcing, "Lady Shinomiya, we've been expecting you." Her father immediately reprimands her for being late. Her mother, maintaining a facade of elegance, offers a passive-aggressive excuse on Iori's behalf, claiming her salon appointment ran over. Iori observes her mother with a critical eye, noting that despite her gentle appearance, the woman is extremely self-centered, emotionally cold, and uninterested in anything outside herself. She glances at her father, who gives orders with suffocating pressure. Despite their criticisms, Iori notes internally that she is technically still on time. The Shinomiya family sits opposite the Saiga family. The conversation turns to Iori's history, with someone inquiring if she had been working after graduation. As she prepares to answer, Iori gets a clear look at her betrothed. She recognizes him instantly. It is Hayaki Saiga. She observes that he is even more handsome than she remembered. Iori explains to the table that she worked for one of the Shinomiya Group's companies for about 2 years. She clarifies that although her father opposed her employment, she insisted on it because she wanted to gain real-world experience. Hayaki listens to this revelation with a composed tone and a cold, impenetrable gaze. He offers a brief compliment, stating that she is a dependable young lady and that her mindset is wonderful. Despite his polite words, Iori feels a disconnect. She predicts that she might not get along with this person, sensing that he is not enthusiastic about the marriage either. The discussion shifts to the logistics of their union. Hayaki declares that he has no preferences regarding the arrangements and will leave everything to them. He suggests they stop being so formal and talk openly. Iori appreciates his straightforwardness. Seizing the moment, the elders suggest that the two of them talk alone for a bit. Left alone in a private seating area with coffee on the table, the atmosphere shifts instantly. Hayaki checks the time and states bluntly that he cannot afford to waste too much time. He looks at Iori and delivers a cold ultimatum, "You can do as you please." He clarifies that even after they are married, they will not interfere in each other's lives. He asks to confirm just one thing, that she understands this marriage is that kind of arrangement. Iori is stunned by the sudden shift in his demeanor. She questions internally if this is his true nature. It becomes clear to her that this man will never open his heart to her. Hayaki presses her, asking if that aligns with her understanding. Subdued, Iori replies, "Yes." The narrative jumps forward to the present day, where Iori sits on the floor of a casual room, sharing tea with her friend Cheyenne. Cheyenne asks if the couple is like completely passing ships. Iori confirms that she has hardly seen her husband. Cheyenne, with zero hesitation, asks the invasive question, "Not even once, did the deed?" Iori chokes violently on her tea, coughing as Cheyenne hands her a tissue. Cheyenne is an old friend from middle and high school. She currently works as a model and possesses striking features. Her background is artistic and elite. A German grandfather, a father who is a renowned conductor, and a mother who is a famous violinist. Cheyenne is described as free-spirited and outspoken. She admits she was totally curious about what kind of sex a super high-spec guy like Hayaki would have. Judging by Iori's reaction, Cheyenne correctly deduces that they haven't done it. Iori reflects on their school days. There was an unspoken caste system, invisible but present, as most students came from upper-class families. Saiga Hayaki was considered amazing even then. He represents a traffic jam of high-spec qualities: a good job, good family background, smart, and handsome. Cheyenne asks how one guy can have everything. Iori and Cheyenne became close quickly because neither of them was good with those suffocating social relationships. Cheyenne comments that even among the high-spec people she meets as a model, Iori's husband is on another level. She presses for details about their domestic life, asking about the first day they lived together. Iori recalls that although he came to pick her up, he was really indifferent. A flashback reveals Iori's first entry into their shared home. Hayaki stands in a pristine, modern apartment. He gestures vaguely, telling her that anything there is hers to use as she likes. He points to a tablet device on the wall, instructing her that if she uses it, she will be connected immediately to the concierge who will handle everything for her. He asks if there are any questions, and upon hearing none, immediately declares he is heading back. As he walks away, Iori stands bewildered, thinking, that's it? It wasn't what she imagined. She had wanted to at least try to get to know him. Back in the present, Iori reveals that Hayaki never returned from that day on. Cheyenne notes that Iori is weirdly earnest about strange things, seeing that she tried to connect with him even though she was so against the marriage initially. Iori explains her logic. She can't say she hates him when she doesn't even know him. She felt she couldn't go on without understanding each other at all. However, she has now resigned herself to the situation. She figures she was just judging him based on looks and decides that if they really can't stand each other, they can just get divorced later. Cheyenne identifies a critical flaw in this plan. She looks at Iori and says, "So Iori's divorced, huh?" Then, she drops the bomb. "What do you think about being a divorced virgin?" Iori freezes, her mind filling with question marks. The reality of the label, divorced virgin, 25 years without a boyfriend, sinks in. Iori argues that it isn't funny and would be a nuisance. Cheyenne laughs hysterically, finding the situation rare and amusing. Cheyenne advises her to just do it, while she is still with her husband. She insists there is no shame in intimacy if they are married. Iori begins to panic about her future prospects. She asks if guys know if a woman is a virgin when they do it. She worries about dating someone after her divorce and whether she would be able to hide her inexperience. Cheyenne suggests she just tell the truth, but then pivots to a more practical solution. Wouldn't it be comforting if her first time was with someone experienced like Hayaki? Cheyenne teases her, suggesting she wait in his bed and ask for a kiss in a cute way. Iori rejects this fantasy as impossible and unreasonable, terrified of being rejected by Hayaki's cold stare. The conversation is cut short as Iori realizes it is time for her part-time job. She reveals she is still working at the same place she worked during college, a cafe restaurant called Felice. She explains that she originally started working there because she liked the delicious food and cozy atmosphere. After visiting a few times, she became friends with the owner couple, and when they were short on staff, she agreed to help out. Since she has nothing to do every day in her empty marriage, she continues to work there. As she prepares to leave, Iori declares her long-term strategy. She plans to save money so that once she gets divorced, she won't have to go back to her parents' house. She is sick of being a pawn and refuses to be set up with someone else after the divorce. She feels she has fulfilled her duty by going through with the arranged marriage. Cheyenne cheers for her, telling her, "Well said." Iori leaves feeling grateful, thinking that Cheyenne never denies her and has always been a source of support. The warm, ambient interior of the restaurant Felice, where Iori Shinomiya sits across from her friend Cheyenne, mapping out a future that exists beyond the confines of her current political marriage. Iori declares her intention to attend culinary school once she leaves her family home. She confesses to Cheyenne that cooking is the only skill she can genuinely claim proficiency in. Reflecting on her college years, Iori recalls a deep sense of frustration with herself, feeling as though she possessed nothing of value. However, she has approached this new path with pragmatism. She has investigated the costs and believes she can manage the financial burden. She plans to utilize the wages she saved from her part-time jobs, as well as her current full-time earnings, demonstrating a level of responsibility that impresses her friend. Iori's mind drifts back to the origins of her passion. She admits that she lacked the confidence to live alone and harbored a profound hatred for the looming specter of an arranged marriage. Life felt tough until she integrated cooking into her daily routine. The turning point was her time at Felice. She discovered that cooking was amazing because of its capacity to generate happiness. Once she mastered the work, it transformed into fun. The emotion she felt upon witnessing customers eating the food she prepared was a revelation. She never knew that bringing happiness to others through her own creation could feel so rewarding. Back in the present, Cheyenne praises Iori for having everything planned out perfectly. Iori explains that cooking remained a cherished hobby even after she quit her part-time job to start full-time work. Seizing the moment, Cheyenne makes a generous offer. She has an extra room and suggests that Iori come live with her after the divorce. Cheyenne welcomes the idea enthusiastically, proposing that Iori could simply cook occasionally in lieu of paying rent, as her food is so delicious. Iori beams with gratitude, admitting that Cheyenne is seriously saving her, as she had been worrying about her future living arrangements. As Iori prepares to leave, Cheyenne questions her mode of transport, asking why she is taking the train instead of a taxi. Cheyenne reminds her that she is the wife of the heir to the Saiga group. Iori brushes this off, arguing that it would be ridiculous to take a taxi when she is going out to earn modest money from a part-time job. She insists she will pay rent when the time comes. Later, in the solitude of her living space, Iori contemplates the moral complexity of her situation. She acknowledges that she might not see her husband face-to-face until the divorce. Currently, Hayaki pays for her living expenses, and Iori feels a distinct awkwardness in using his money. She reasons that even if she uses a little, it means nothing to him financially, Yet her conscience dictates that relying on it is just not right. Cheyenne's warning echoes in her mind. Eventually, there will be a party or event where they must attend together as a couple. The scene shifts to the bustling kitchen of Felice. Iori apologizes to her co-worker, Misaki, for working the night shift. Misaki brushes it off, asking if Iori's husband is okay with it. Iori cannot bring herself to reveal that she has never even met her husband properly due to the political nature of their union. Instead, she vaguely replies that he will probably come home late. Another staff member, Sumigo, asks for help with the evening prep. Iori steps in to handle the desserts, specifically the panna cotta in the fridge, which requires decorating with strawberries and mint. As the shift winds down, the staff chats casually. Iori maintains her cover, having never told these kind people the truth about her identity as the daughter of the Shinomiya real estate president. When asked about her day job, she vaguely describes working at a real estate company. The staff sympathetically notes she has a tough job. The owner comments that her husband's job must be something similar. Iori leaves the warm atmosphere of Felice feeling the weight of her deception on her conscience. At 21:08, Iori checks her phone and sees a missed notification from Saiga Takanari's secretary, Mr. Kanzaki. She wonders if she should call back. Upon connecting, Kanzaki apologizes for the late hour and explains that they entered the residence to retrieve the president's belongings because he had to leave on an urgent business trip. Iori is relieved that the intrusion was merely for that purpose. However, Kanzaki delivers a second message. The president will attend a large party next Friday and would like his wife to accompany him. Iori's heart sinks. She admits she is not good with parties but agrees to attend. After the call, dread washes over her. She anticipates that by marrying the brilliant Hayaki Saiga, she has stirred up resentment. She knows that at such events, there are always women her age who look down on her for no reason. The narrative jumps to the evening of the party. It is 1850. Iori stands in her room, dressed in a formal black gown, checking her phone. She notes the car is scheduled to arrive at 7 o'clock, but they are already here. She rushes out, apologizing for the wait as she enters the vehicle. Hayaki sits inside, impeccably dressed. He dismisses her apology coolly, stating, "No, not at all," before turning his gaze away. The car ride transforms into a suffocating vacuum of silence. Hayaki displays no intention of making small talk, seemingly focused on work or his own thoughts. Iori feels the pressure to ensure she does not embarrass him, despite the fact that he has not said a single word to her since she entered the car. She finds the situation ridiculous. They are supposed to act like a happy couple at the venue, yet he hasn't even looked at how she is dressed. She observes that he is making it painfully obvious that he is not interested. Frustration boils over within Iori. She reminds herself that they will be divorced in 6 months anyway, so she decides to stop caring. In a rebellious act of self-preservation, she declares internally that she has had enough. She retrieves her earphones and puts them on, shutting out the awkward atmosphere. Music floods her ears, and in a moment of lapsed concentration, Iori lets her guard down completely. She accidentally hums or sings a few notes aloud. She snaps back to reality with a horrified, "Huh?" She looks over to find Hayaki staring directly at her. She realizes she totally let her guard down despite her resolve. Unsure how to recover, she debates whether to smile it off or apologize sincerely. Hayaki breaks his silence, not with a reprimand, but with a question, "What song was that?" Iori freezes, realizing that just smiling won't make him go along with it. She tentatively answers that it is by a band called Messy. Hayaki admits he has never heard of it. Then, in a move that completely baffles Iori, he gestures to the car's console and suggests she can connect her device and play it through the car speakers. Iori panics at the suggestion. She frantically refuses, insisting he doesn't have to go out of his way to listen to it. Internally, she screams that playing a trendy band song in this stiff, formal situation would be a disaster. Hayaki accepts her refusal but states, "We'll talk about this again on the way back." Iori prays he forgets all about it by the time they head home. As the car continues its journey, she is left bewildered by his behavior, wondering if he is unexpectedly generous when it comes to hospitality, as she simply does not get him. The towering facade of the Shugo advertising headquarters pierces the night sky, its windows aglow with the artificial luminescence of the city, signaling the commencement of the president inauguration party without further delay. Inside the venue, the atmosphere vibrates with the hum of high society conversation as a sea of guests in formal attire attends to the proceedings. Manager Satu stands at the podium, his speech winding down, marking the transition to the next phase of the evening. Amidst the crowd, Iori stands in a high-necked, dark floral dress, her posture betraying a deep, encroaching exhaustion. Sweat beads form on her temple as she internally laments the endless stream of greetings, her feet throbbing in protest against the prolonged standing. Beside her, Hayaki, the newly appointed president, observes the room with a sharp, discerning gaze. He detects the subtle signs of distress in Iori, noting her fatigue before she voices it. He leans in, his voice low and considerate, treating her with a delicate care that makes Iori feel momentarily infantilized. He inquires if she can endure just 5 more minutes, gauging her resilience. Iori attempts to dismiss his concern, stammering that it is nothing at all, but Hayaki interrupts her deflection. He grants her permission to step out if the social pressure becomes insurmountable, his perception cutting through her facade. He explicitly identifies her need to use the restroom, a polite pretext to allow her a moment of respite. Iori admits to herself that this is the first time she has engaged with such a multitude of people at a party, the sheer volume of social interaction draining her reserves. Hayaki, sensing the limit has been reached, signals an end to their immediate obligations, encouraging the guests to enjoy conversations among themselves. As the crowd disperses slightly, the physical toll manifests in Iori's body language. She slumps slightly, a sigh escaping her lips as she acknowledges the pain in her feet. Hayaki immediately responds, resolving to call for their car and wrap up the evening. He glances at her, asking if she is tired, to which she can only offer a weary affirmation. However, the sanctuary of their private conversation fractures as 3 women in the background begin to whisper, their eyes locked on Iori. They launch a passive-aggressive assault, fully aware their voices carry over the din. They mock Iori's presence, sneering at how she acts the part of the dutiful wife. The gossip intensifies as they dissect the political nature of the marriage, referencing her lineage as the daughter of the powerful Shinomiya group. They characterize her as arrogant, high and mighty, and speculate that Hayaki, a busy and wonderful man, likely has no patience for someone so selfish. Iori clutches her handbag, the knuckles whitening as the insults land with precision. The realization that Hayaki stands close enough to hear every derogatory word amplifies her humiliation. She spirals into shame, convinced that he must share their assessment, fearing he views her through the same lens of disdain. She chastises herself for her own thoughts, feeling small and exposed under the weight of public scrutiny. Suddenly, Hayaki pivots, his attention shifting entirely to Iori. He reaches out, his hand gently cupping her face, an intimate gesture that arrests her spiral. He scrutinizes her expression, asking what kind of face she is making, calling it cute, in a way that disrupts her expectation of judgment. He dismisses the negativity of the room, declaring that her expression is going to waste and stating, with deliberate volume, that she looks especially beautiful today. The sudden compliment leaves Iori stunned, her mind reeling. Hayaki does not relent. He takes her hand, his thumb grazing the ring on her finger, and loudly proclaims that he truly wanted to marry her. He suggests to the eavesdroppers that perhaps she was the unenthusiastic one, flipping the narrative completely. As he strokes her hand, Iori's eyes swirl in a comedic display of absolute confusion and shock, her internal circuitry overloading at this uncharacteristic display of affection. Hayaki continues his performance, or perhaps his confession, stating he is genuinely happy and considers himself a lucky man to have such a beautiful wife. Hayaki then guides her away from the stunned gossipers, his demeanor shifting back to a protective efficiency. He comments on her humility being almost excessive and notes her incredibly strong will. He immediately circles back to her physical well-being, asking if her foot is okay and assuring her the car will arrive soon. He observes that she had been enduring the pain the entire time, his awareness of her physical state remaining sharp. Iori, still processing the whirlwind of events, realizes he protected her from the malice of the other women. She apologizes for not noticing his intention sooner. Hayaki presses again, asking if the pain persists. Iori, flustered, stammers that her foot is fine and things are back to normal, trying to regain her composure. Hayaki accepts this, but as they move down the hallway he asks her to come closer for a moment. Iori freezes, her heart pounding. She desperately wants to ask if he performed that display solely for her benefit, but fear of sounding conceited stops her. She settles for a vague comment about being surprised, and asks if he hated doing it. Hayaki leans against the wall, a rare, relaxed smile gracing his features. He admits that if he went that far, he figured it would silence the detractors. Iori questions the necessity of the theatrics, noting that a single glare from him would typically suffice to shut anyone up. Hayaki acknowledges this but explains his motivation with disarming simplicity. Because she is his wife, it is only natural that he would defend her. The casual, possessive weight of the word wife strikes Iori with the force of a revelation. She blushes furiously, unable to meet his eyes, and hurries toward the waiting car to hide her reaction. Settled into the plush interior of the car, Iori collapses into the seat, the adrenaline fading into exhaustion. The digital clock on the dashboard reads 21:52, emphasizing the lateness of the hour. She wonders if they were truly at the party for so long. Her thoughts drift to Hayaki, who sits silently beside her. She speculates that he is likely working again, his busyness the perpetual reason for his absence from home. Yet, the memory of his defense lingers. She touches her chest, feeling the resonance of his words. He defied her imagination, treating her as someone special despite the transactional nature of their union and the fierce opposition from his own daughter. The narrative perspective shifts to Hayeki, revealing his internal monologue. In a quiet room, likely his office, he reflects on the origins of this marriage. He recalls a conversation with an associate where he explicitly stated his lack of interest in marriage, agreeing to the union solely to ensure a merger went through. He had coldly instructed his lawyer to prepare for a divorce once the merger was secure and unaffected. He had agreed to the arrangement with a mindset of temporary convenience, judging Iori based on rumors of her selfishness without ever having spoken to her directly. However, a flashback reveals the moment his perception fractured. He recalls watching Iori from a distance in a hallway. She had dropped the contents of her purse, a lipstick, a compact, scattering them across the floor. Instead of the explosive temper he anticipated, he watched her crouch down, aided by another woman. Iori offered a gentle, genuine smile to the stranger helping her, a stark contrast to the headstrong, selfish rich girl he had constructed in his mind. That single smile dismantled his prejudice. Hayeki decided then to observe her without interfering, adhering to their agreement but with a newfound curiosity. He admits that his intense work schedule and absence likely caused her to dislike him. Yet, seeing her at the party, her emotions raw and visible on her face, stirred a protective instinct he hadn't anticipated. When he saw her on the verge of tears, holding back against the gossip, he felt compelled to act. Reflecting on his life, Hayeki acknowledges that he has avoided romance and women for years, repelled by the pride, money, bravado, and scheming that typically accompany such relationships in his world. But Iori is different. Her inability to hide her emotions, her transparency, feels comfortable to him. Being with her, he realizes, is not unpleasant at all. It is a welcome departure from the calculated existence he has always known. Inside the luxurious confines of a moving vehicle, the atmosphere is heavy with a quiet, intimate tension. Hayeki sits with a stoic posture, his gaze directed downward, fixated on the woman resting against him. Iori has collapsed onto his lap, her body limp with exhaustion, her head nestled deeply into the fabric of his trousers. He observes the curve of her neck and the way her shoulder rises and falls with her breathing, his hand hovering hesitantly near her arm as if debating whether to touch her or let her rest. His thoughts drift inward, acknowledging a subtle shift in his own professional demeanor. He realizes he is getting distracted from work, a sensation he categorizes as completely unlike his usual disciplined self. He studies her sleeping face, questioning if her collapse was due to pain, his expression softening into a look of concern rather than annoyance. The car continues its smooth transit through the night, the city lights streaking past the tinted windows. Hayeki's internal monologue deepens, revealing a growing curiosity about the woman draped across him. He admits a desire to know more about Iori, recognizing the distance that still exists between them. He rationalizes her position, deciding that resting on a man's lap, even his, is preferable to sleeping in an awkward, neck-straining posture against the door. His hand finally settles gently on her shoulder, a gesture of silent apology, as he chides himself for not being more considerate earlier. He notes that she shows no signs of stirring, her deep slumber serving as evidence that she must be truly exhausted from the events of the evening. Consciousness begins to trickle back to Iori through a haze of sensory details. In the darkness behind her eyelids, abstract bubbles of awareness float upward as she hears a voice echoing from a distance, calling her name. The command is muffled but authoritative, instructing someone to bring her belongings and follow. She acknowledges the voice calling Ori, but the weight of sleep presses down on her, sealing her eyes shut. She resigns herself to the darkness, feeling too heavy to respond, drifting back into the void with a passive acceptance. Sensations begin to sharpen as reality intrudes upon her dream state. A pleasant, masculine scent envelopes her, accompanied by a radiating warmth that feels undeniably comfortable. This sensory input triggers a sudden spike in alertness. Her eyes snap open, the transition from sleep to wakefulness abrupt as she registers the smell and the tactile sensation of being held. The world tilts disorientingly around her. Iori finds herself suspended in midair, her body cradled securely in Hayeki's arms. Confusion instantly morphs into shock as she stares up at his profile, her mind racing to process why she is being carried. Hayeki, sensing her awakening, glances down with a calm, explanatory demeanor. He states matter-of-factly that she fell asleep in the car and failed to wake up even after they arrived at their destination, which is why he is currently transporting her. He admits he anticipated this outcome, implying he knew she was at her limit. Flustered and embarrassed, Iori protests weakly, suggesting that he could have simply woken her up instead of resorting to such a dramatic measure. Hayeki counters her accusation without breaking his stride, asserting that he did indeed try to wake her, but his efforts were futile against her deep sleep. Desperate to regain some agency and dignity, Iori insists that she is fine now and requests to be put down so she can walk on her own. However, Hayeki ignores the request, pointing out a critical logistical failure. She is not wearing shoes. Confusion washes over her as she asks about the whereabouts of her footwear. Hayaki explains that Kanzaki, their driver/assistant, has them and is following right behind them. This revelation deepens Iori's embarrassment. She stammers an apology, mortified that she has caused trouble not just for her husband, but for his staff as well, imagining the inconvenience she has imposed on the driver. Hayaki dismisses her apologies with a stoic reassurance, carrying her effortlessly through the hallway. He remarks that it is not really a bother and, aiming to soothe her insecurity, adds that she is not heavy at all. Ori, pressed against his chest, finds herself analyzing the physicality of the situation. She observes that while the act of carrying her doesn't look difficult for him, she never categorized him as the athletic type. The realization that he is surprisingly strong sends a ripple of awareness through her. Her analytical mind, attempting to assess the situation calmly, is betrayed by the sensory reality of their contact. She becomes acutely aware of the placement of his hands. One of his broad hands is firmly positioned beneath her knees, supporting her legs, while the other secures her back. The intimacy of the Princess Carrie hits her with full force. She realizes no man has ever touched her in these specific places before, creating a seriously embarrassing position that flushes her cheeks with heat. The lace pattern of her dark dress presses against his suit, the visual contrast highlighting the closeness of their bodies. They reach the entrance of their residence, stopping before a high-tech door. Hayaki maneuvers slightly, needing to access the security panel. He instructs her to hold on as he shifts his weight. The electronic lock requires fingerprint authentication. In this moment, he leans in, bringing his face dangerously close to hers as he positions his hand on the sensor. The proximity overwhelms Iori. The distance between them vanishes, filling her field of vision with his features. The lock beeps and clicks open, signaling access granted. Hayaki announces he is going to put her down, his voice low and steady. He lowers her gently, allowing her stocking-clad feet to find purchase on the floor. The moment physical contact breaks, Iori stammers a formal thank you, bowing slightly in gratitude. Her heart races, the residual sensation of his touch lingering on her skin. She thinks about how he treats her, unable to calm the flutter in her chest. Hayaki averts his gaze, simply stating, "No need," before turning away, leaving her standing there with her emotions in turmoil. The sound of the door closing or him moving away echoes in the quiet entryway, but her internal agitation remains high. The narrative shifts forward in time, marking the passage of 2 weeks. The domestic atmosphere has undergone a subtle transformation. Prior to the incident, Hayaki rarely came home while Iori was still awake, often returning late at night or not at all. However, a new routine has established itself. On this particular evening, the digital clock displays 21:42. Iori stands in the living room, anticipating the sound of his arrival. The door opens, and Hayaki enters, home relatively early again. He walks into the living area, and Iori greets him with a soft, "Welcome home." The simple domestic greeting carries weight for her. She reflects that it feels almost like they are a real couple, saying welcome home to her husband. Hayaki acknowledges her greeting, loosening his tie as he speaks. He explains that things at work have finally calmed down, suggesting a more relaxed schedule moving forward. He admits that the recent period was exceptionally busy, accounting for his previous absences. Iori asks if he finished early today, and he confirms. The conversation reveals the reason behind his intense schedule, the merger with the Shinomiya company. Iori recalls hearing about this major business move and realizes that his distance was a result of professional obligation rather than personal avoidance. This realization brings her a wave of relief. She offers to make him something to eat, asking if he is hungry, but Hayaki politely declines, stating he has already eaten. He informs her he is going to take a shower and heads towards the bathroom. Left alone in the living room, Iori processes her emotions. She questions why she feels happy about the revelation that he wasn't avoiding her. She reminds herself that they are in a strictly practical marriage, so his personal feelings towards her shouldn't matter. Yet, the relief is undeniable. Her phone vibrates on the table, interrupting her introspection. The caller ID displays Cheyenne. Iori picks up, her thoughts still lingering on the recent interaction. She admits to herself that ever since the party and the incident in the car, she gets oddly tense when talking to Hayaki. She wonders if she was acting weirdly just now. She attributes her reaction to her lack of experience, noting that being carried was the closest she has ever been to a man, and she likely has no immunity to guys. She sighs, frustrated with herself for getting flustered over a simple bit of kindness. Cheyenne's voice bursts through the phone speaker, energetic and probing. She invites Iori to come out for a quick drink, asking if she can grab one now or if Cheyenne should come over to her place. Iori declines, explaining that she hasn't taken a bath yet, but the real reason follows quickly: Hayaki is home. Cheyenne, immediately catching the implication, expresses surprise. Iori explains that Hayaki is home today, making it difficult for her to go out. Cheyenne, connecting the dots from previous conversations, exclaims in shock. She realizes that Hayaki wasn't avoiding Iori after all, but was genuinely busy with work. Iori confirms that work has calmed down and he has been coming home around this time more frequently. Cheyenne hums thoughtfully on the other end of the line, analyzing the situation. She notes that while there is nothing major enough to call progress, the fact that he is coming home more often is a significant change from his previous behavior. She presses Iori, asking if they have talked and if there has been any development. Cheyenne then pivots the conversation aggressively to a more sensitive topic. With a mischievous tone, she brings up that problem of Iori's. Iori hesitates, but Cheyenne presses on, declaring that since Iori isn't the romantic type, this is the perfect timing to address her virginity. Cheyenne chides her, asking if she forgot about it already. Iori flinches at the directness. Cheyenne suggests a bold solution: why not just ask him? Iori is appalled by the suggestion, unable to fathom how she could possibly ask such a question. She stammers that it is impossible. Cheyenne rationalizes that Hayaki doesn't seem like a bad guy, implying it might work out if she just initiates. Iori vehemently rejects the idea. She argues that just because they have opened up a little doesn't mean she can cross that line. She declares she would rather die than say something like that. Cheyenne mimics the hypothetical request casually: I don't want to get divorced while still a virgin, so please sleep with me once. Cheyenne claims she wouldn't mind saying it, treating it as no big deal. Iori panics, imagining Hayaki's potential reaction to such a bizarre request. Cheyenne, sensing Iori's hesitation, invokes the name Tatsuya, perhaps referencing a mutual acquaintance or a hypothetical scenario where a guy like that would definitely go for it. Cheyenne doubles down, advising Iori to try a simpler approach if the direct request is too much. She suggests asking, "Let's kiss cutely?" Iori shakes her head violently, her face burning. She asks what Cheyenne is thinking, asserting that she actually has some boldness in her but absolutely cannot say something like that. The idea of asking for a kiss paralyzes her. Cheyenne, relentless, argues that if Iori manages to kiss him, then he is basically hers. Overwhelmed and at her limit, Iori shouts into the phone for Cheyenne to stop messing with her and declares she is hanging up. Cheyenne laughs on the other end, unbothered, and agrees to talk properly next time. Iori ends the call, muttering that Cheyenne shouldn't push high-level techniques on someone inexperienced. She reflects that such tactics only work for Cheyenne. As the beep of the ended call fades, Iori is left alone with her racing heart, lamenting that if she becomes even more conscious of the situation, she won't know what to do. She sighs, thinking that her friend always says too much. A woman wearing a casual dark track jacket stands in her kitchen, marveling at the steaming plate of curry she has just prepared, her eyes widening as she anticipates the rich flavor profile of the dish if consumed immediately. The sudden, metallic click of the front door unlocking shatters her culinary focus, causing her to freeze in place. A tall man dressed in a sharp business suit enters the entryway, stepping out of his shoes with practiced efficiency while the woman recoils, clutching the plate to her chest in genuine shock. She glances at the clock, which reads 19:02, a time that registers as inexplicably early for his return, leaving her scrambling to process the deviation from his usual schedule. Hayaki, noticing her frozen posture and wide eyes, pauses to inquire if an incident has occurred, his voice calm but questioning. She stammers a denial, apologizing for her visible startled response, and admits that she simply did not anticipate his presence at this hour. He explains that his work concluded earlier than standard, offering a pragmatic reason for his arrival before his attention shifts to the savory aroma filling the room. He correctly identifies the dish as curry but immediately attributes its creation to the housekeeper, asking if today serves as their day off, revealing a fundamental misunderstanding of the household's inner workings. She corrects him, clarifying that she cooked the meal herself and that the housekeeping staff is employed strictly for cleaning duties. Hayaki processes this new information, admitting he assumed the household staff managed all domestic affairs, having never considered that his wife might possess a culinary inclination. She explains that both of them were raised in staffed homes, so his assumption is logical, but she cooks because she genuinely enjoys it as a hobby. She recalls seeing various ingredients in the refrigerator and deciding to utilize them, turning her gaze downward as she admits she likes making food. He stares at her, a realization dawning on him that contradicts his previous image of her, while she nervously swallows, wondering if he finds her hobby strange. When he asks if she has eaten, she realizes the implication of his lingering presence. She serves him a portion, watching him from the kitchen counter with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. She observes him sitting at the dining table, noting internally that he maintains his striking appearance regardless of the setting, though she has only ever seen him in a suit. As he accepts the plate with a polite expression of gratitude, she worries if the portion size will suffice for a grown man. An overwhelming wave of emotion hits her. She feels a surge of happiness intertwined with embarrassment, struggling to identify the precise nature of the feeling bubbling within her chest. She realizes that this moment marks the very first time they have sat at this table together to share a meal. Hayaki grips his spoon, his hand looking large and masculine against the delicate cutlery, while she watches him with bated breath. Her internal monologue spirals into doubt. She reasons that a man of his status surely possesses a refined palate that simple home cooking cannot satisfy, fearing that he is merely eating to fill his stomach rather than for enjoyment. He raises the spoon to his mouth and chews silently, his expression unreadable, which only serves to spike her nervousness. She watches his throat move as he swallows, agonizing over whether the taste is acceptable or disappointing. It dawns on her that this is the first time she has ever cooked for a man, adding a layer of gendered pressure to the experience. Suddenly, Hayaki breaks the silence with a simple, direct verdict. It is delicious. He compliments her skill, stating with absolute seriousness that it is the best curry he has ever tasted. She stammers, asking if he is serious, unable to fully accept the high praise. He affirms his statement, pointing out that he has no logical reason to lie about the quality of food. She analyzes his demeanor, recalling that he is usually blunt, which makes her wonder if he is overcompensating with politeness. She attempts to deflect the compliment, suggesting he is exaggerating and that his enjoyment is enough reward for her effort. However, he cuts her off, reiterating with intense eye contact that he meant every word and that his assessment of it being the best is not hyperbole. The sincerity in his voice pierces through her defenses, and she finally accepts that the meal is truly delicious to him. At that moment, the ambiguous emotion she felt earlier crystallizes into clarity. She realizes that this person, her husband, has just provided her with something she had always desperately wanted, the simple intimacy of eating the same meal with someone who smiles at her. Overwhelmed by the fulfillment of this modest desire, she feels tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. Hayaki notices her shift in demeanor and questions it, prompting her to quickly wipe her eyes and dismiss it as nothing. She whispers that the food tastes better than usual, attributing the flavor to the company rather than the recipe, and thanks him softly. Seizing the fragile intimacy of the moment, she signals that there is a topic she wishes to discuss. He grants her permission to speak, and she confesses that she had been contemplating this throughout the meal. She points out that since their marriage, their communication has been virtually non-existent outside of eating, leaving a vast gulf of understanding between them. She expresses a desire to know more about him and to honestly express her own feelings, trying to be brave in her vulnerability. She proposes that they utilize the remaining time to get to know each other better, fearing that if they continue on their current trajectory, she will harbor deep regrets when their scheduled divorce arrives in 6 months. Hayaki agrees immediately, stating he had been thinking the same thing and has no objections to her proposal. However, his approach shifts instantly from emotional to analytical. He asks if she has specific hopes or requests regarding this meeting halfway, treating the relationship negotiation like a business strategy. He pledges to do his best to meet her expectations if she articulates them clearly. Hayaki's mind visualizes a corporate flowchart labeled hypothesis, practice, and verification, his expression intensifying as if he is in a boardroom meeting. The woman feels the sudden pressure of his analytical gaze, panicking internally because she had not thought far enough ahead to provide a concrete action plan. Desperate for an answer, she glances at her phone screen, which displays a romantic article or manga suggesting one should try saying, "Let's kiss cutely." In her flustered state, the word, kiss, bypasses her filter and slips out of her mouth as an interrogative squeak. She instantly turns crimson, horrified that she voiced the thought aloud, realizing the massive gap between his serious business demeanor and her accidental request. She attempts to backtrack, waving her hands and stammering that she did not mean it in that context. However, Hayaki processes the word, and the image of a kiss coming from his mouth sends her imagination spiraling. She tries to diffuse the tension by laughing loudly and awkwardly, hoping to play it off as a joke or a slip of the tongue. Hayaki does not join in the laughter. Instead, he clears his throat and looks at her with a composed expression. He apologizes, not for the situation, but for his hesitation, and clarifies that he understands her request. He states plainly that he does not mind, confirming he is willing to proceed with the kiss she seemingly requested. The woman freezes as the splash of realization hits her like cold water. He has taken her accidental utterance as a literal directive. Before she can correct the misunderstanding, Hayaki shifts his position on the sofa, sliding closer to eliminate the physical distance between them. She watches in stunned silence, her internal monologue screaming that she didn't mean to actually suggest it, but he is already moving forward with the plan. He places a hand on the cushion near her, leaning in with intent, and quiets her with a soft. Her heart races as his face comes into close proximity, the reality of the situation crashing down on her. She is about to kiss Hayaki. A moment of high-stakes internal turmoil for the female protagonist. Her mind races with frantic questions, struggling to process the reality of the situation as she asks herself if she is truly on the verge of kissing him. A sense of panic seizes her chest, and she mentally screams for a pause, feeling that the intensity of the moment is placing a strain on her heart that she cannot withstand. She spirals into self-doubt, comparing the ease with which an experienced person might handle this situation against her own clumsiness. The realization crashes down on her that she has blundered, acknowledging herself as a total beginner in matters of intimacy. Desperation fuels her thoughts as she frantically strategizes, wondering if confessing her lack of experience right now would be the wiser course of action. She reasons that if he knew, he might treat her with more consideration. However, a counterthought strikes her immediately. Admitting such a thing constitutes a massive hurdle for a novice, and she worries intensely about how such a confession would alter his perception of her. She frets over the image she projects, questioning if this hesitation makes her look foolish. Despite her internal chaos, she steels her resolve. She verbally requests another attempt, asking if they can try again. To facilitate this, she announces that she will close her eyes, signaling her readiness and vulnerability. As she squeezes her eyes shut, her internal monologue shifts from panic to a deeper understanding of the man before her. She reflects that she has come to understand Hayeki. She realizes he is not the cold person she once thought he was. This realization crystallizes into a profound desire. She explicitly wants her first experience of this nature to be with him, with Hayeki. A heavy silence descends upon the room, amplifying the tension. With her vision obscured, her insecurities flare up again. She feels a wave of embarrassment for having verbalized her desires so plainly. The lack of visual input makes her paranoid, and she wonders if he is observing her while she waits, just as he has done before. She keeps her eyes shut but remains hyper-aware of her surroundings. Suddenly she senses a shift. She is taken aback by a presence drawing near. She realizes that the moment is arriving. He is coming closer. The anticipation becomes agonizing. She waits, her heart pounding, but the contact does not immediately happen. Frustration bubbles up, and she internally screams for him to just get it over with already. She feels that her heart is at its absolute limit and cannot endure the suspense any longer. Time seems to stretch, leading her to question the delay. She wonders why it hasn't happened yet and when exactly he intends to make his move. The sheer awkwardness of the wait makes her feel that she truly cannot handle this kind of situation. Then the act concludes. She processes the event, a kiss. She looks at Hayeki, who appears infuriatingly calm, maintaining his usual aloof demeanor. His composure irritates her, as it suggests that the moment which nearly stopped her heart was not a big deal to him at all. Hayeki, however, shatters her assumption. He speaks up, contradicting her internal assessment by stating that that's not true. Visually, the scene shifts to a wider angle on the sofa. Hayeki is seated, and he has pulled her body onto his, creating a complex tangle of limbs where she straddles his lap. He looks up at her with an intensity that belies his previous calmness, while she looks down, confused and flustered. He creates a bridge between them with his hand, touching her neck as he leans in. He poses a question that sends a shock through her. He asks if she thought that single step forward was the end. She stammers, completely caught off guard by the implication that there is more to come. He does not give her time to process. He closes the distance again, capturing her in a series of kisses. She is overwhelmed, questioning what is happening as the physical sensations wash over her. She can only utter soft sounds of confusion and surrender. The narrative focuses on the sensory details of the experience. She registers the sensation as soft, a tactile surprise that contrasts with her racing heart. She blushes deeply, thinking that this level of intimacy is seriously bad for her heart's health. As she opens her eyes slightly, she observes Hayeki's face up close. She is struck by his expression, noting that it is really good. She never imagined that Hayeki would make a face like that, full of emotion rather than his usual stoicism. As the intimacy continues, uncertainty creeps back in. She wonders if they are just going to keep going like this indefinitely. She questions whether they should stop now. Yet, amidst the confusion, she admits a crucial truth to herself. She does not hate this at all. Hayeki, sensing her struggle to maintain composure, offers gentle guidance. He instructs her to try breathing through her nose. She realizes that even though she has no idea what she is supposed to do, he is leading her. The physical intensity mounts, and she lets out a heavy sigh, her breath catching. She feels overwhelmed, thinking that he has gone too far. Hayeki pauses, noticing her reaction. He asks her seriously what is wrong, showing concern for her state. She retreats mentally, reflecting on the encounter. She realizes that, in the end, she found herself completely caught up in the moment as well. The intensity with which he kissed her leaves her reeling, shocking her that he was capable of such passion. Needing a moment to recalibrate, she abruptly announces that she is going to take a shower. Left to her own thoughts, she analyzes Hayeki's character. She notes that he typically has zero interest in kissing or sex. He usually projects an aloof and dispassionate aura. However, she recalls the way he smiles, realizing that she probably likes that expression on him. She confesses to herself that she likes that side of him. Then, a memory of him apologizing surfaces, adding another layer to her understanding of his actions. Safe inside her private space, she leans against the door, processing the revelation of what a kiss actually entails. She concludes that it was intense. A knock at the door startles her. She stammers a response, grateful that her room is equipped with its own bathroom, allowing her to escape effectively. She acknowledges that the previous interaction was definitely way too much stimulation for her. She tries to cool off, fanning herself and willing her temperature to drop. Desperation sets in as she wonders what she should do, finding herself unable to get the memory of the kiss out of her head. Eventually, she emerges and encounters Hayaki again. She notices a change in his appearance immediately. She deduces that Hayaki must have also taken a shower, as his bangs are down rather than styled up. The hairstyle change softens his features, and she observes that he actually looks younger than his age with his hair down. Hayaki initiates a practical conversation about their living arrangement. He notes that he does not think they will have much time to spend together. He explains that he generally comes home late, and although things have calmed down a bit recently, the schedule mismatch persists. He frames his next suggestion as a matter of compromising. He proposes that, given their time constraints, they should share a bedroom. She agrees almost reflexively, saying, okay, and yeah. She rationalizes this decision by thinking that it isn't like she wants to compromise to the point of cutting into her work hours, so this solution seems logical. Suddenly, the reality of her agreement hits her. She frantically backpedals in her mind, thinking, wait. She tries to stammer a qualification, admitting that his logic is true, but hesitant. About the implications. Hayaki, seemingly oblivious to her internal panic, states plainly that if they do this, the time he gets to see her face will simply increase. She freezes, realizing she missed her chance to react appropriately because he said it so casually. The definition of bedroom crashes into her mind. It means they would sleep together. She is incredulous that he could say something so significant so casually. She questions if he means it literally. Panic rises as she wonders if this is him making a move on her. She struggles to decipher the true meaning behind his proposal. She tries to rationalize the situation. She acknowledges that if that is the case, going further might be natural for a couple, but she reminds herself that they are not a typical married couple. She also considers that Hayaki is the type to say things really directly. She recalls the intensity of their earlier kiss. Hayaki intervenes in her spiraling thoughts, assuring her that if she is not comfortable, he won't force it. She finds the way he is suggesting it to feel kind of roundabout. Despite the confusion, she arrives at a core feeling. She doesn't hate the idea. She deliberates further. She questions whether sharing a room automatically implies a romantic progression, but ultimately circles back to the realization that she really doesn't hate it. She marks this as a good thing. Making a decision, she speaks up clearly. She states that there are no lies in her response. She pragmatically points out that the bed in her room is a bit bigger. Therefore, if they are going to sleep together, using her bed is the better option. She concludes with a decisive, then let's go. Hayaki reacts with surprise, uttering a confused, eh. He asks if she is okay and if she needs him to bring anything. She is startled, realizing that he means for this change to happen immediately, starting today. She stammers, caught off guard by the suddenness. However, she reflects that if she were to say no here, it would feel like the distance they have finally closed might grow again. She resolves not to let that happen. The scene transitions to her carrying her pillow into the shared space. She enters the room and closes the door. She blushes, realizing that no matter how much she thinks about it, the conclusion remains the same. She tells herself, I'm okay with it, recognizing that this phrase is simply her version of saying, I don't hate it. Inside the room, domesticity takes over. Hayaki informs her that there are spare toothbrushes in the washroom and invites her to feel free to use one. She acknowledges the need to brush her teeth. Upon entering the washroom, she sees Hayaki's toothbrush and notices a spare. She realizes that the spare is exactly the same type as his, creating a visual link between them. The washroom feels pretty empty otherwise. She brushes her teeth, feeling that she is doing so more carefully than usual. As she finishes and turns off the light, stepping out of the washroom, a wave of nervousness washes over her. She admits to herself that she is so nervous because, after all, she doesn't know what is going to happen next. The chapter ends on this note of anticipation and uncertainty. Inside the bedroom, Hayaki sits upright in bed, his attention fixed on a laptop resting on his lap. He wears glasses, a detail that immediately catches Iori's attention as she enters the room. The sound of typing fills the silence. Perceiving her presence, Hayaki glances up and asks if she is working, but quickly corrects himself to address her arrival. He indicates a spot on the bed next to him, inviting her to sit over here. Iori steps forward, apologizing softly for the intrusion. Hayaki closes his laptop, signaling that he is done with his tasks. Iori sits on the edge of the bed, her body rigid with tension. A storm of nervousness rages within her. Her heartbeat accelerates to a frantic pace, pounding against her ribs. She stammers, telling him not to worry about her, her words fragmented by anxiety. Hayaki, sensing her unease, assures her that he will be done soon. He apologizes briefly. Iori notes the intensity of his gaze as he looks at her, causing her to freeze under his scrutiny. Her mind races with anticipation and dread regarding what comes next. She fixates on his statement about finishing, wondering if it implies a transition to physical intimacy. Doubt creeps in as she questions whether she is truly going to be with someone of his caliber. She asks herself if they are really going to have sex now. Her thoughts drift back to the terms of their arrangement, recalling the stipulation that as long as the contract is in effect, they can do whatever they want with others. She remembers the cold logic that even if they married, they would not interfere in each other's lives. She reasons that he has no obligation to be with her, as he could easily take his pick of partners. Despite these doubts, she re-evaluates his earlier proposal about sharing a bedroom. She wonders if he simply meant it literally, just sleeping in the same room. However, the prospect of sex complicates her emotional landscape. She recalls her previous resolve to lose her virginity specifically because they were heading for divorce. Now, the situation feels fundamentally different. Something feels off about her previous motivation. She admits to herself that she does not want to die a perfect virgin, and considers if having sex would be better. A new realization strikes her. If they consummate the relationship, she might become unable to even think about divorce anymore. She probes her own desires, asking what she really wants in the end. She hypothesizes that the very fact he proposed growing closer means that divorce is no longer on his mind. A sense of longing washes over her. She wants to stay in this state forever. The atmosphere between them feels undeniably warm. Morning light floods the room, accompanied by the chirping of birds. Iori stirs, realizing she slept incredibly well. Beside her, Hayaki is already awake. He comments simply that it is good to hear she slept well. Panic sets in as Iori realizes she fell asleep instantly again. She is incredulous that she drifted off just like that. She worries that perhaps last night was supposed to be an important night, yet nothing happened. Hayaki disrupts her spiraling thoughts by announcing he is heading out. Flustered, she asks about breakfast. She chastises herself, feeling like a total slacker for going to bed first, waking up later, and failing to make breakfast. Hayaki leans in and presses a kiss to her cheek. He explains casually that he never eats breakfast at home. Iori stands frozen, touching her cheek in surprise. Time accelerates. The narrative jumps forward 3 weeks. Clocks tick through late hours, indicating the passage of many nights. Hayaki often asks if she is still awake during these late nights. Iori reflects on the routine established over the past 3 weeks. She has been sleeping in Hayaki's room every night. Initially, she felt unsure about what to do, but the arrangement quickly became natural. Now, she goes to sleep there as a matter of course. On days when Hayaki works late, he sends her a text message informing her, and she acknowledges it simply. The mornings follow a similar rhythm. She wakes up to find Hayaki sleeping beside her. The sound of a hairdryer fills the room as she prepares for the day. Hayaki asks if she is ready, signaling their synchronized schedules. At night, they exchange good night wishes. Yet, Iori internally notes that nothing happened again today. She analyzes the physical dynamic. In the beginning, she lay in bed nervous, reacting to every single movement Hayaki made. Despite sleeping together every night, they still haven't had sex even once. She concludes that Hayaki never tried to do anything more and seemingly has no intention of having sex. This confuses her because when he hugged her previously, the intensity was such that she thought her heart was going to explode. She questions the meaning of that past kiss. She wonders if his suggestion to share a bedroom was truly just to spend time together. He kisses her many times now, sometimes leaning on her, sometimes on the cheek. These are light kisses. However, the aggressive, deep, tongue-entwined kiss from before has never been repeated. Lying in the dark, she wonders if this moment is finally it. She feels her chest potentially touching him and checks if he is asleep. She acknowledges that sharing a bedroom definitely brought results. Physically, they are so close to each other. She observes that lately, their relationship has really started to feel like that of a married couple. However, she fears she is the only one being swayed by this proximity. The scene shifts to them sharing a meal at a table. Iori notes that they are getting used to each other and starting to open their hearts. She recognizes subtle changes in him, despite him not being the type to show emotions on his face. Over these 3 weeks, she has seen many sides of Saiga. The atmosphere between them has become pretty relaxed. She believes Saiga has seen various sides of her as well. Internally, she grapples with the exclusivity of her feelings. If asked if it could be anyone else, she would say no. Becoming aware of her own feelings scares her. Since they started sleeping together, she realized she really likes sleeping this way. She never knew the warmth of another person's skin could bring such comfort. She attributes this comfort specifically to the fact that the person beside her is Saiga, acknowledging that she doesn't know what he is thinking, but the feeling remains. The narrative cuts to a conversation with a friend, who yells in shock, telling Iori not to say it like that. Iori stammers, admitting they have been sleeping together for weeks. The friend clarifies with disbelief that they haven't done it yet. The friend asks for the husband's age again. Iori confirms he is 32. The friend speculates if age is the reason. The friend continues her analysis, noting that figuring out the mind of a handsome elite heir is way too hard. She demands Iori figure it out. The friend suggests that perhaps he has reached a point where he asks, "Do I even need sex anymore?" She theorizes he might have gone through life without trouble with women and has now reached a state of enlightenment, where just cuddling is enough. Iori is horrified, thinking that was her last hope. The friend asks a pointed question, doesn't that make Iori feel like she will never want to do it for the rest of her life? Iori vehemently rejects this idea, shouting that it is impossible. The friend advises her to just ask him if she is that troubled. She suggests asking simply, "We sleep together every night, so why aren't we having sex?" She adds that a sudden trigger might change the mood. Iori asks if her friend really thinks she should ask. The friend admits it is a hard topic to bring up. However, she points out that based on what she heard, it seems he really likes Iori. She argues that no one would hug someone they hated and sleep next to them every night. While the direction of his feelings might be unclear, the affection is there. The friend then turns the table on Iori, stating clearly that Iori has fallen for him too. Iori is left stunned by the directness of the observation. The title, lightweight, immediately setting a thematic undertone for the events to follow. The narrative begins in a bright, casual cafe setting where Iori sits across from a close female friend, engaging in a candid conversation about her relationship with Hayaki. The friend, leaning in with a teasing yet perceptive expression, points out the obvious change in Iori's demeanor, asserting that she has clearly fallen for him. Iori, flustered and blushing, averts her gaze but quietly admits the truth of the observation. Her friend continues to list Hayaki's positive traits, noting his good looks and the surprising revelation that despite Iori's terrible first impression of him, he is actually a kind person. The friend reasons that Iori would not be agonizing over the situation this intensely if it involved someone she did not care about, reinforcing the depth of Iori's developing feelings. The conversation shifts to the topic of physical intimacy, specifically Hayaki's restraint. The friend speculates that Hayaki might be holding himself back intentionally. She argues that it is biologically normal for a man to get aroused, even if he has reached some level of enlightenment, especially when sleeping in the same bed every night. Iori, becoming increasingly flushed and overwhelmed, stammers that she has no way of knowing such things. Undeterred, the friend leans over the table with a mischievous glint in her eyes and suggests a practical, if bold, solution. Iori should press her body firmly against his to physically check for a reaction. The friend emphasizes that since they already sleep pressed up close together, she could do it casually without raising suspicion. The scene transitions to a visualization of this advice, where the friend playfully hugs a cushion to demonstrate the firm press, causing Iori to panic and frantically wave her hands to stop the graphic description. However, the humor fades as Iori's expression turns somber. She voices her deepest insecurity, the possibility that it isn't about him holding back, but rather that he simply does not get turned on by her at all. She questions if her modest chest size is the issue, or if he views her merely as a person rather than a woman with sexual appeal. The friend falls silent at this self-deprecation, which only hurts Iori more, confirming her fears that she lacks the sex appeal to provoke a reaction from her husband. The setting shifts abruptly to the interior of a luxury limousine at night, the city lights streaking past the windows. Hayaki sits beside Iori, dressed in formal evening wear. He notices her silence and turns to her, his expression concerned, asking if she is feeling sick or if something is wrong. Iori, startled from her internal spiral, quickly assures him she is fine. Internally, however, she is relieved that the women who had caused trouble at the previous party are not present today. She recalls Hayaki's firm stance at the last event, deducing that his clear defense of her has likely deterred them from approaching again. Despite this reassurance, the anxiety lingers as she attempts to mentally prepare herself for the social obligations ahead. Upon arriving at the Shirakawa Corporation's 50th anniversary celebration party, the atmosphere is opulent and crowded. Iori holds a glass of champagne but finds it too strong after a sip, her tolerance for alcohol remaining low. Hayaki, attentive to her discomfort, immediately intervenes, telling her she doesn't have to force herself to drink and offering to get her something else. Iori tries to maintain her composure, reminding herself that her role here is to be an elegant, flawless wife, concealing the nervousness she feels from the raffle and the crowd. As they navigate the venue, a man and a woman approach them. The man greets Hayaki, mentioning he returned about a month ago but has been too hectic to reach out until now. Hayaki responds with a polite smile, acknowledging it has been a while, and introduces Iori as his wife. The woman standing beside the man is identified as Cheyenne. Cheyenne, an elegant beauty, remarks on the news of Hayaki's marriage. Hayaki clarifies to Iori that Cheyenne is a friend from his university days. The conversation reveals that Cheyenne is Cheyenne Takamori, the daughter of the founder of the Takamori Medical Association, and the man beside her is her husband, the hospital's deputy director. Cheyenne's husband realizes he doesn't have a business card but greets them politely. There is a subtle tension in the air as Cheyenne offers a cryptic pleasantry, suggesting it is better if nothing ever happens, but inviting them to come to her if it does. Hayaki excuses himself to say a quick hello to someone he made eye contact with, leaving Iori alone with Cheyenne and her husband. Cheyenne encourages Hayaki to take his time, and her husband also departs to greet an acquaintance, creating a moment of isolation for the two women. Cheyenne watches Hayaki leave and then turns her attention to Iori, initiating a conversation that unravels the history between her and Hayaki. She explains that she and Hayaki grew naturally close in university because they were in the same situation, both destined for arranged political marriages chosen by their fathers. It was assumed by those around them that they would marry each other to merge their families' interests. However, Cheyenne eventually married her current husband, chosen by her father, and she and Hayaki drifted apart for about 3 years. Cheyenne then pivots the conversation to Iori's marriage, asking directly how things are going with Hayaki. Iori offers a vague, standard response that they are managing well enough. Cheyenne presses further, her intuition sharp, asking if things aren't going well, noting that they haven't been married long. Iori struggles to maintain her facade, admitting internally that while they sleep in the same bed, intimacy always stops at just kissing. Externally, she stammers, unable to say things are going well but unwilling to admit failure. Cheyenne hands Iori a fresh glass of alcohol, which Iori accepts without realizing its strength, distracted by Cheyenne's probing. Cheyenne observes that trying to play mind games with men like Hayaki is pointless because of the age gap. Older men are skilled at hiding their true thoughts. She advises Iori that the best approach is surprisingly straightforward: ask him directly. Cheyenne suggests that directness might resolve things unexpectedly easily. However, she then plants a seed of paranoia, warning Iori that men like Hayaki, rich, talented, and handsome, are always surrounded by women waiting for a chance to swoop in. Cheyenne urges Iori to show the confidence of a true wife and scare off these lurking rivals. Iori, feeling small and incapable, thinks that is impossible for her. Her mind drifts to the type of women Hayaki might be used to, beautiful women with great figures and big breasts. She becomes convinced that Hayaki finds her lacking compared to these women and that his lack of sexual desire is a result of her physical inadequacy. As she spirals into this self-destructive train of thought, she unknowingly consumes the wine Cheyenne provided. Cheyenne watches her, her expression unreadable but vaguely pitying, as she offers to grab more drinks. Iori, realizing too late that she has been drinking wine, feels the alcohol hit her system rapidly. Her face flushes and she becomes dizzy. Hayaki returns with a glass of red wine, but Iori, recognizing her limit has been breached, excuses herself to the bathroom. She declines his offer to accompany her, desperate to hide her intoxicated state from him. Stumbling into the hallway, Iori's condition deteriorates. She leans against the wall, dizzy and needing water, lamenting that she told Cheyenne she was fine when she clearly isn't. She is determined not to show such a pathetic sight to everyone, especially Hayaki. As she frantically looks for a vending machine or a place to sit, her legs give way. Just as she is about to collapse, a figure catches her, asking if she is okay. The chapter ends with Iori breathing heavily, narrowly saved from a dangerous fall, but her internal and external state in complete disarray. The atmosphere in the grand hall hummed with the low murmur of high society, but for Iori, the world had begun to tilt dangerously on its axis. A wave of vertigo washed over her, her vision blurring as she swayed unsteadily in her formal gown, the sounds of the party fading into a muffled buzz. Before gravity could claim her, a firm, familiar warmth enveloped her side, stabilizing her trembling frame. Hayaki Saiga, her husband, had instantly perceived her distress, his expression shifting from social pleasantry to immediate concern as he gripped her arm to keep her upright. He leaned in close, his voice cutting through the haze of her intoxication, and inquired if she felt sick, his eyes scanning her pale face for answers. Recognizing her inability to stand unaided, Hayaki suggested they find a place for her to sit, his protective instincts flaring as he shielded her from the prying eyes of the other guests. Ori, barely maintaining consciousness, registered the dangerous proximity of the floor and the sudden, comforting solidity of her husband. To her, the sensation of his support felt strangely familiar, a tactile memory surfacing through the alcohol-induced fog. He noted her precarious state, observing that she looked in desperate need of a break, his hand lingering on her back to guide her. As they navigated through the crowd, whispers began to ripple through the bystanders. A man in the background muttered to his companion about the trouble his wife was causing, their eyes tracking the couple's exit with judgment. Iori, sensitive to the scrutiny even in her compromised state, caught the scent of Hayaki's cologne, a sensory anchor in the spinning room. Hayaki, ignoring the murmurs, professionally excused them from the conversation, prioritizing Iori's well-being over social etiquette. He identified himself simply as Saiga to those they passed, asserting his presence while maneuvering her toward the exit. Outside the suffocating venue, the cool air did little to clear Iori's head as they settled into the plush interior of their waiting limousine. The vehicle began to move, but Iori remained trapped in her own vertigo, her head still spinning violently. She squeezed her eyes shut, a wave of guilt crashing over her. She felt she had already burdened Hayaki far too much for one evening. Desperate to maintain some semblance of dignity, she insisted she was fine, though her internal monologue betrayed her, revealing that she had merely spaced out and was perhaps sobering up, albeit slowly. Hayaki sat beside her, his gaze unreadable, perhaps contemplating the events that had just transpired. Iori's mind raced with anxiety, wondering if he had managed to handle their abrupt departure smoothly or if she had caused a diplomatic incident. She recalled how she could barely stay on her feet back in the hall, acknowledging the humiliating reality that the person he had brought along, his wife, had gotten thoroughly drunk. Logic dictated that he must be furious. It was only natural for a man of his standing to feel disgusted and angry at such a display. She feared she had made a disgraceful scene, one capable of tarnishing Hayaki's impeccable reputation. The silence in the car grew heavy, suffocating Iori with her own insecurities. She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, a physical manifestation of the shame spiraling within her. She realized that Hayaki had not spoken a single word since they left the hall, his silence amplifying her fears. Typically, she possessed a stronger resolve and wouldn't succumb to tears so easily, but the alcohol and the emotional weight of the situation had stripped away her defenses. Her mind began to construct a bleak narrative. If he was this silent, it confirmed that the only thing he required from her was formality. She concluded, with heartbreaking certainty, that he didn't view her as a woman at all. In his eyes, she surmised, she was likely no different from a random body pillow, a prop to be displayed and discarded. The realization that she couldn't even manage that simple role successfully crushed her. She felt the end of their relationship looming, convinced he must be completely fed up with her incompetence. Yet, a pragmatic voice within her whispered that she wasn't in a position to complain. A man of Hayaki's caliber had countless other choices available to him. He didn't need to force himself to be with a woman like her. This train of thought only deepened her sadness. She began to question the very nature of their intimacy. If he didn't desire her, was there any meaning to them sleeping in the same bed? She recalled her original rationale. She had suggested they try to get closer so that if they eventually divorced, they wouldn't do so as strangers, thereby avoiding regret. But somewhere along the line, her feelings had shifted. She realized that by the time she made that suggestion, she must have already started harboring genuine affection for Hayaki. She had hoped that getting to know each other might lead to a sustainable married life. However, despite sleeping together for a month, no physical intimacy had occurred. She felt no desire from him to have sex. The car came to a halt, the door opening to reveal the garage of their home. As she stepped out, she tried to rationalize his behavior. Perhaps Hayaki, too, was trying to get to know her in his own way. Maybe he thought a simple kiss, likely the one from a previous interaction, was sufficient, a mere greeting rather than a spark of passion. She reasoned that since he didn't dislike her as a person, he might consider their current arrangement acceptable. But as her heels clicked against the pavement, a surge of resolve cut through her despair. That might be fine for him, she thought, but she could not continue a relationship defined by such hollowness. Inside the house, Iori's coordination failed her again. She stumbled, nearly walking past the entrance to her own home in her daze. Hayaki, ever watchful, was immediately there to catch her as she tipped forward, his arms encircling her to prevent a fall. He reassured her softly, telling her it was okay, but Iori, flushed with shame, immediately began to apologize. She attempted to pull away, startled by the contact, but his grip remained firm, steadying her against her will. "You don't have to do that," she protested weakly, trying to assert an independence she clearly didn't possess at that moment. She insisted she could walk on her own, declaring, "I'm fine," even as her body betrayed her. Hayaki ignored her protests, his focus entirely on ensuring her safety as they moved further into the residence. Once steady, Iori bowed her head deeply, the weight of her apology filling the space between them. She explained that she had met some old friends for the first time in a while and, caught up in the moment, had ended up drinking wine and getting carried away. She apologized again for causing trouble, admitting she hadn't expected the alcohol to hit her so quickly and intensely. With lowered eyes, she vowed to be extremely careful from now on to ensure such an incident never happened again. Hayaki listened patiently, his demeanor softening. He told her that everyone gets drunk once in a while, dismissing her catastrophic view of the evening. He reassured her that he wasn't expecting perfection, telling her plainly, "It's fine." Iori breathed a sigh of relief, thanking him for his tolerance. However, the emotional chasm remained. As they stood in the hallway, Iori made a decisive pivot. She announced that she was tired and would sleep in her own room tonight, bidding him good night as she turned to leave. Hayaki stood frozen for a moment, the rejection catching him off guard. He watched her retreating back, processing her sudden withdrawal. Iori, walking away, felt a heavy certainty in her chest. She knew that if they shared the same bed again tonight and nothing happened, she would inevitably end up crying. She acknowledged she was being overly pessimistic, but she couldn't bear the silent rejection of another sexless night. Suddenly, Hayaki intercepted her, stopping her progress. He questioned her abruptly, asking if she meant that she couldn't sleep well when she was next to him. He demanded to know why she was suddenly declaring she would sleep in her own room. Iori, caught off guard by his intensity, stammered that that wasn't what she meant at all. Hayaki pressed on, his logic simple: if she didn't sleep poorly next to him, then staying together should be fine. Iori's frustration boiled over. She shouted, "Why?" turning back to face him, demanding to know what it was that he didn't like. She asked if he simply didn't want to be with her, questioning why he was holding back so much. She pointed out the futility of their arrangement, stating that even if they slept together, nothing would happen anyway, implying the lack of physical intimacy was the core issue. Hayaki looked at her, confused by her outburst. Iori, unable to stop herself, let the torrent of her insecurities flow. She admitted she knew she wasn't making sense, but she confronted him directly, "Why don't you sleep with me?" She confessed that she was losing confidence as a woman because he never made a move, despite them sharing a bed for a month. She continued, her voice trembling with vulnerability. She compared herself to the beautiful women he was surrounded by, noting their great figures. In contrast, she disparaged her own body, mentioning her small breasts and what she perceived as zero sex appeal. She concluded that he just didn't feel that way about her, and that was the reason he didn't want to sleep with her. As the words hung in the air, Iori realized she had blurted out way too much, her hands flying to her mouth in shock. She looked at him, fear and embarrassment mixing in her eyes. Hayaki, however, did not look angry. He looked at her with a sudden clarity, stating quietly, "I understand how you feel." Before she could process his words, he moved. In a fluid motion, Hayaki closed the distance between them. He grabbed her, pulling her into a passionate embrace and capturing her lips in a deep kiss. Iori's eyes widened in shock, her body stiffening before melting into the contact. He pulled back slightly, looking directly into her eyes with an intensity that shattered her previous assumptions. "I'm going to make love to you now," he declared, his voice leaving no room for argument or doubt. Iori could only let out a small, stunned sound of surprise as the reality of his desire finally reached her. The heavy silence of the bedroom shattered as Hayaki Saiga pulled Iori into his arms, his declaration hanging in the air. He tightened his hold, instantly dismantling the wall of insecurity she had built, and clarified that his previous inaction was never a result of rejection. He insisted she was misunderstanding the situation entirely. Hayaki confessed that if they were speaking of desire, he had possessed it from the very start. He explained that he had simply been holding himself back. Iori, still reeling from the sudden intimacy, questioned him, her voice laced with confusion as she asked, "Why?" Hayaki dismissed her earlier self-deprecating comments about her body, stating firmly that he was not particularly picky about breast size. He escalated the emotional weight of the moment by admitting he had never harbored feelings like this for any other woman. He looked at her, cutting through her defenses, and reiterated that he had been restraining himself despite seeing her as a beautiful, stylish woman. Iori struggled to process this new reality, stammering as she tried to comprehend that he had been holding back for the sake of not having sex. Hayaki elaborated on his rationale, revealing a protective patience she hadn't expected. He explained that he thought they should wait until she grew a little more comfortable with physical contact. Then, he dropped the true reason for his hesitation. He believed it was obvious that this would be her first time. The assumption stunned Iori. She questioned his certainty. Hayaki, however, had already made up his mind. If she was willing, he was done waiting. He noted that her reactions had given her away. He asked if she really thought his restraint was subtle, but then brushed the thought aside, deciding that right now, the past didn't matter. Iori, flustered, asked if it was really that obvious. Hayaki confirmed that her inexperience was evident when they kissed and in how she reacted to him. He reminded her that she had even told him she was a beginner. Panic and anticipation swirled within Iori as Hayaki commanded her to turn around. She obeyed, her internal monologue noting that her heart was beating so loudly it felt deafening. Hayaki declared he wasn't waiting anymore and began to undress her. Iori attempted to stall, asking him to wait just a second, but he instructed her to sit up. As the reality of the situation crashed down on her, she acknowledged that this was seriously embarrassing, yet she couldn't deny that it was really happening. Hayaki loomed over her, his expression unreadable but intense. Iori felt her resistance crumbling. She knew she couldn't stop him. Her mind raced to the lighting in the room. She desperately wanted to turn the lights off, fearing the exposure. She worried about being seen in the light, her insecurities flaring again. Yet she observed Hayaki's face. He looked perfectly calm. This contrast struck her. He claimed he had been holding back for a month, yet he appeared so composed. She wondered if he was even turned on. Hayaki broke through her thoughts, his voice low and reassuring. He acknowledged again that he knew this was her first time. He promised to be as gentle as he could. As they joined together, Iori's world narrowed to the sensation of his touch. She realized with a sudden, overwhelming clarity that she never knew being wanted by someone could feel so wonderful. She noticed Hayaki finally losing his composure, looking a bit overwhelmed himself. Later, as the adrenaline faded, Iori drifted towards sleep, asking if it was almost over. A few weeks passed, transforming the atmosphere of their home. The awkward distance was replaced by domestic comfort. Iori found herself snuggled against Hayaki on the sofa while he read from a tablet. She realized she was the type of person who wanted to be spoiled, a facet of her personality she hadn't recognized before. She noted that even when she snuggled up to him, Hayaki didn't seem to mind at all. She had previously assumed he wouldn't like clinginess, but being next to him felt incredibly calming. He looked up from his device, asking if she had finished work, and pulled her closer. Iori reflected on the dramatic shift in their physical relationship, losing count of how many times they had been intimate since that first night. She marveled at his intensity, admitting she never thought Hayaki would be this passionate. It confirmed for her that he really must have been holding back before. She admitted to herself that being with him felt really good. As he called her name and drew her in, she felt her heart fill with the sensation of being loved. Since the day they first had sex, their relationship had been nothing but smooth. Iori felt a surge of pride, believing she was the only one who could break through Hayaki's calm composure. She gained at least some confidence that she was loved. Reasoning logically, she concluded that no husband would be this intimate with a wife he was thinking of divorcing. Consequently, the thought of divorce vanished from her mind. She felt sure Hayaki felt the same. She recalled her father's advice: if you really hate it, you can divorce. She realized that since she didn't hate it, there was no reason not to continue their married life. She decided that whether they divorced or not, the decision should be theirs to make. The fact that she allowed Hayaki to do such intimate things to her was a surprise even to herself. During a dinner date, Iori realized they hadn't gone out together since they got married. Hayaki had suggested they eat out once in a while and complimented her, saying she looked especially beautiful today. Iori blushed, noting he was nothing like the man at the first party. He was actually smiling. She admitted internally that she had gotten so excited she ended up dressing up a little too much. Over dinner, Hayaki brought up a new topic. He wanted her to come with him to his family home. This reminded Iori of her own familial obligations. She asked if they didn't need to go to her side as well. Hayaki agreed to pencil it in. Iori confessed she had totally forgot until her family recently reminded her to show up once things settled down. Hayaki offered to adjust his schedule if she told him when to go. Iori worried that if she went back alone, it might cause unnecessary worry. She feared that if her father thought she and Hayaki weren't getting along, he might decide that divorce was inevitable. She knew her father tended to overanalyze everything once he started worrying. Therefore, she resolved to show up together with Hayaki to demonstrate they were a happy marriage. If her father thought she was getting a divorce, he might start planning things for her future, and she didn't want that. Hayaki agreed to make arrangements on his end. As the conversation settled, a deadline loomed in Iori's mind. She realized there was less than 2 months left. Originally, she had set a 6-month deadline for their potential divorce. Now, with that date approaching, she acknowledged the need to really think things through.